Hello, hello, Miss Bree here again. If you've seen my videos, I'm Miss Bree. If you haven't seen any of my lessons yet, I will formally introduce myself to you today. My name is Miss Bree, like I said. I am a student at Arizona State University. And a few things about me. My dad is a music teacher. As you can see some of the instruments in the back of me. I love swimming and I love winter time as well. So I love being outdoors and snowboarding. It's so much fun. So today I'm going to be teaching you guys about folk tales and fables, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys so you can see what I'm doing on my end. Okay, so we are going to be talking about in this lesson recounting folk tales from diverse cultures. Okay, so the word culture, think about that word and think about what that word means to you. So assuming that most of you live in the United States, if you're tuning in from out of the United States, you're going to be from a different culture than us. So I live in Arizona in the United States of America. In our culture, we might develop different habits that maybe are different than living in China. We're going to be talking about China a lot and exploring their culture this lesson. So I'll use that as an example. So for example, maybe we shake hands, and in China, maybe they bow to say hello, right? So there's different things that make up a culture, okay? So I just wanted to introduce that very quickly. So what we're going to be doing today is recounting stories, including fables and folktales from diverse cultures, and determine their central message, lesson, or moral. You guys are going to be able to learn how to do that through retelling stories, including characters, settings. We're going to talk about important events from the beginning, middle, and end by creating a puzzle organizer. So just a little bit more in depth, the background, you're going to be able to know all of this knowledge. Right now, you might be thinking, oh my goodness, this is so much to think about. You're going to get to know all of this knowledge by the end of the lesson. By knowing what folktales and fables are, you're gonna figure out, what is this author trying to tell me in this fable or folktale? And you're going to learn what recounting is and why recounting stories is so important and why I'm going to be teaching it to you, okay? So some key vocabulary that you're going to hear us mention a lot in this lesson is going to be the word recount. It's going to be the word fables. You're going to hear a lot about the word folktales. And you're going to hear a lot between the words message, lesson, and moral. Okay, so I'm going to tell you guys right now that those three words, message, lesson, and moral, they all have somewhat of the same meaning. And we're going to go in depth about all of these new key vocabulary words, okay? Stay tuned. So recount. The word recount means to retell something in our own words, okay? So that can be by voicing, that can be by writing. So I have two pictures here to show you that retelling or recounting is just retelling your interpretation in your own words. So for example, I might hear a story from my mom. I have 3 older sisters, so I might hear a story from my mom, and the way that I processed it in my brain might be different than the way that my sister processed it in her brain. So my story, I might retell in my own words, my interpretation of the story, and my sister might have a whole new interpretation of the story, right? So recounting is just retelling something in your own words. And if you remember, we can kind of touch base again on what I said this lesson is going to be about. It is mainly going to be about how to recount a story. So you're going to be getting lots of practice on how to figure out how to retell a story or how to recount a story. So fables, this is our other key vocabulary word. What is a fable? Think about these last couple days, if you have been tuning into any of my lessons, you've probably heard us talk about informational texts. You've probably heard us mention narrative, or I'm sorry, literature texts. And now you're going to be hearing us talk about fables. Okay, so these are all different types of stories. Okay, so when you go in a library, our books are all separated into different sections. So this might be a section that you maybe are interested in, our fables. So a fable is typically a short story with animals as the main character. It's not always just animals, but typically it's going to be animals, okay? So that means mostly, majority of the time, it's going to be about animals being the main characters. Fables are where the story has a main moral of a story, okay? So a moral is going to be some sort of a message, some sort of a lesson that our author is trying to tell us through reading a story. So right here I have two examples of fables. We have the tortoise and the hare, right? So do you see there's animals? There is animals as my main characters of my story. And just by looking at this book, we can tell that this is about, it looks like it's a race between a rabbit, so a hare, which is another name, and another race are competing against tortoise, which is a type of turtle, type of reptile, and they move very slow. So it looks like this is going to be about some type of a race, right? And there's probably an important message behind that book. Our next book on the right is called The Three Little Pigs, which is a very familiar story that most of us have heard as little kids. But if you haven't heard about it, it is about three pigs who go on a walk, and they are each going to build houses three different types of ways, right? And if you read that story, you know that in real life that pigs cannot build houses. However, this is a made-up story. It is a fable with pigs as our main characters building houses. And there's probably another message that is in that story, which is why it's considered a fable. But I'm not going to spoil that because I want you guys to maybe find those books and read them. So moving on to folk tales. So you might notice folk tales. These books look a little bit older, right? Their illustrations look a little bit older. But just by looking at the title of my two books, they might be very familiar books, or even movies now. These are made into movies now. So what is a folktale? A folktale is a type of story spread usually by word of mouth, which means that it's passed down from generations in a particular culture, okay? So what that means is that maybe someone in your family wrote a folktale. And that folktale, maybe your great-great-great-great-grandmother wrote a folktale. And then that great-great-grandmother passed it down to the next person in the family. And then that person passed it down to your aunt. And then that person passed it down to your uncle. And that uncle passed it down to your mom. And then your mom passed it down to you. So that's what we mean by when a story like a folktale is spread or passed down from generations in a particular culture, okay? So for this given lesson, we're going to be focusing on a Chinese story. However, that Chinese story that we're going to be focusing on was also written in an American folktale. So there's going to be two different types of stories with the same characters, but there could be maybe the same meaning, but it could be told in a different type of a way, okay? So for example, here for our folktales, we have Cinderella on the left. So as you can see, that this story of Cinderella the illustration looks a lot different than maybe the movie of Cinderella. So the story of Cinderella is probably hundreds of years old, right? It goes way back in time. However, today, the way that we have now filmed a movie of Cinderella, they may not have been able to do, so they just had books. And we've made Cinderella look maybe a little bit different than this Cinderella, but they still have the same message and they still are somewhat of the same story, I'm sure. Our next one that I have as an example is Little Red Riding Hood, okay? So Little Red Riding Hood, you might have heard about this folktale. It's a very popular one in the American culture, but it's not only popular in the American culture. There's also a Chinese version that we're going to be learning about later. So that's why this standard for you guys is so important to learn and to teach, that there's folktales that are so diverse from all different cultures that maybe share similar messages, and it's very important for us to experience and get to know all of those different cultures around the world, right? Because our world is so big and we have so many people that live here that it's so good to understand different types of cultures and the way that everyone tells things. So now, what's the difference between a folktale and a fable, right? Because we just talked about two different things that sound somewhat similar. So a folktale, which is what we just learned about, Cinderella and Little Red Riding Hood were the examples. So a folktale is a fictional story, which means that it is not true. It is based off of make-believe information. So a fictional story that teaches a moral or a lesson. It is usually a longer story with a problem and a solution. And sometimes it has a good character versus a evil character, okay? So point out those key details. A folktale is a fictional story. It teaches us a moral, which is some sort of a lesson, and it's usually long. That is the key difference between a folktale and a fable. It is a long story. Another key fact is that it has good versus evil characters, right? A fable is going to be a fictional story as well, so they do share some similarities. It teaches us a moral or a lesson, so that's another similarity that they share. However, here's the difference. A fable is going to be a shorter story, right? So a folktale is going to be a little bit longer, and it's probably going to have many pages in a book. A fable is going to be a short story. It might just be maybe as short enough to cover as much that's on one piece of paper, where a folktale is going to be more of a book and you're going to flip through pages. So a fable most of the time has animals as the characters. So if you remember, a fable here, we have the three little pigs and the tortoise and the hare. The main characters don't look like they're people, right? They're pigs, and they're a hare, a rabbit, and a tortoise, okay? So they're based more on animals. A folktale, however, looks like it's going to have people. And if you know the story of Cinderella, you know that there is not a nice character in that, right? There is a evil stepmom, and then there is a nice fairy godmother. There's all these nice things. And then in Little Red Riding Hood, we have a not so nice wolf. It looks like peeking out of the corner. And then we have an innocent little girl, right? Who is probably a good character. So that's the difference. So now you keep hearing me mention the word message, lesson, moral. These all have somewhat of the same meaning. And I'm going to tell you that what a central message or lesson or moral typically means in a story is what the author wants us to learn, what they want to teach us about real life, right? So maybe in a story, they're giving us a lesson about not talking to strangers, okay? So maybe something happens in a story where they're telling us a story about somebody in the book. Maybe it's the pigs and the three little pigs, right? There's a big bad wolf, and maybe the big bad wolf tricked them. Maybe he followed them. You just can't trust strangers. So that's a message that is being told in a fable or story, right? Another example could maybe be maybe you have a friend, right? So maybe there's an animal in a story who thinks that they have a friend, or wants to make a friend, and um, the friend isn't so nice at first. Um, but you can't always judge a person off of that first time that you meet them. And maybe a couple of days go by and now you're playing on the playground with that friend. So that's a lesson that you can't always judge people by the first time that you see them or talk to them, right? So we're going to go ahead and just kind of refresh our brain a little bit. A message, lesson, or moral is what the author wants to teach us about real life. So why is it important to know this information? I'm so sorry, my eye. Why is it important for us to know this information? You're probably asking yourself that. So when a reader reads any type of story, it's important to retell the story to ensure that we understand everything that's going on in the story, okay? So it's important for us as readers to think about the message, think about the lesson or the moral that's being told in that story, and think about what is it that the author wants us to learn. What can I learn just by based off of reading this fable or folktale? And how can I apply that in my real life, right? It's important for us to learn about folktales, to learn about all the different cultures and beliefs from all over the world. So if you live somewhere, there's in America, if you live somewhere like America, there's a lot of different cultures here, right? There could be Italian culture, there can be um, Irish culture, there can be Chinese culture. There's so many different types of cultures that have a lot of similarities, but there could be a lot of differences. Like one I explained earlier was shaking hands. In America, we might be normal, it might be normal to shake hands, but going into another country, maybe you greet differently. In Italy, you kiss on the cheek as a hello. Um, Maybe in some countries you give a fist bump. There's many different things, right? So it's very important for us to learn how to live and how to understand all the different cultures. And one way that you can do that at your age is by reading about folk tales. So what happens now? We just learned about how it's so important for us to retell a story so that we understand all of the major events that are taking place in that story. But what happens if we don't understand? What happens if we can't retell a story? Well, that tells me that I probably don't know how to comprehend the story, right? I don't know how to tell what is going on. I don't know how to draw. I don't know how to write what is going on. I don't know how to tell what is going on. So I'm going to reread that story. Or if you're in class or if you're near a friend or a family member, raise your hand or go up to them and just ask them for help. Maybe you forgot what happened on the second page and you don't know why this major event is happening on the next page. So you might just need clarification, and that's okay, right? You're so young and we're learning how to retell and all this information. So just ask. And maybe while you're reading, maybe you can draw pictures along the way to help you. So now some questions to ask ourselves to learn how to retell a story. So questions that you're going to ask yourself or that I'm going to ask you during this lesson are going to be, who are the characters in my story that I'm reading? What is the setting of the story that I'm reading? What is happening in the beginning, the middle, and the end of my story that I'm reading? What's the problem? What message did the main character learn? Did the main character learn to not talk to strangers, or did they learn, oh, it's okay to talk to strangers, right? Which is probably not a good idea. How did the lesson change the main character? Was the main character really happy in the beginning of this, or sad in the beginning of the story, and did they end up really happy? Were they really lost, and did they find what they were looking for? These are all questions that we want to ask ourselves. And I'm going to ask you, before you learn how to ask yourself that, how to interpret these questions throughout reading a story, okay? So now we're going to read a story called Lone Popo, and this is considered a folktale from China, okay? So we may recognize this story. Here's the front page of the book. It's called Lone Popo, and it is a story about Red Riding Hood from China. So we may recognize this from the story called Little Red Riding Hood that we've read about probably a lot here in the U.S. And we're going to listen, and then we're going to work on an activity to learn how to retell a story. But before we get started, I want to ask you some questions. Just based off of this, what predictions can we make about this story? What does it look like? In my opinion, by looking at this story, it looks like there is a wolf. I don't think he looks like a nice wolf, but he could be. What do we think? Who do we think is the good character? Do you think that this wolf is a good character? By looking at this, he could be, but I don't think so, but we'll have to read and find out. Who do we think is the evil character? Is there going to be another character in the story? Is there going to be a girl? Is there going to be a boy? Is there going to be a different type of animal? What do we think the major events are in this story, right? So if you were in a classroom, you would be raising your hand. However, these are just things that I want you to think about right now. So how do we think the story will end, right? Is the wolf going to get his way? Is the wolf not going to get his way, right? These are things that we're just trying to base off of the title, Lone Popo, a Red Riding Story from China in the picture shown. What do we think the lesson of the story is? Is it going to be to pet a wolf or to not pet a wolf? Is it going to be anything, right? Is it going to be to have a wolf as a pet? We don't know. Where is the story taking place? So based off of this this title of the book, it says a Red Riding Story from China. So my guess is that this story is going to take place in China. However, let's find out if we're right. And I have inserted a link here for us to read the story.
Caldecott Medal winner, Lone Popo. Lone Popo, a Red Riding Hood story from China, translated and illustrated by Ed Young. To all the wolves of the world for lending their good name as a tangible symbol for our darkness. Once long ago, there was a woman who lived alone in the country with her 3 children, Shang, Tao, and Paocha. On the day of their grandmother's birthday, the good mother set off to see her, leaving the 3 children at home. Before she left, she said, "Be good while I am away, my heart-loving children. I will not return tonight. Remember to close the door tight at sunset and latch it well." But an old wolf lived nearby and saw the good mother leave. At dusk, disguised as an old woman, he came up to the house of the children and knocked on the door twice. Bang, bang. Shang, who was the eldest, said through the latched door, "Who is it?" "My little jewels," said the wolf. "This is your grandmother, your Popo." "Popo?" Shang said. "Our mother has gone to visit you." The wolf acted surprised. "To visit me? I have not met her along the way. She must have taken a different route." "Popo," Shang said, "how is it that you have come so late?" The wolf answered, "The journey is long, my children, and the day is short." Shang listened through the door. "Popo," she said, "why is your voice so low?" "Your grandmother has caught a cold, good children, and it is dark and windy out here. Quickly, open up and let your Popo come in, the cunning wolf said. Tao and Poucha could not wait. One unlatched the door and the other opened it. They shouted, Popo, Popo, come in. At the moment he entered the door, the wolf blew out the candle. Popo, Shang asked, why did you blow out the candle? The room is now dark. The wolf did not answer. Tao and Poucha rushed to their Popo and wished to be hugged. The old wolf held Tao. Good child, you are so plump. He embraced Poucha. Good child, you have grown to be so sweet. Soon the old wolf pretended to be sleepy. He yawned. All the chicks are in the coop, he said. Popo is sleepy too. When he climbed into the big bed, Poucha climbed in at one end with the wolf, and Shang and Tao climbed in at the other. But when Shang stretched, she touched the wolf's tail. Popo, Popo, your foot has a bush on it. Popo has brought hemstrings to weave you a basket, the wolf said. Shang touched grandmother's sharp claws. Popo, Popo, your hand has thorns on it. Popo has brought an awl to make shoes for you, the wolf said. At once Shang lit the light and the wolf blew it out again, but Shang had seen the wolf's hairy face. Popo, Popo, she said, for she was not only the eldest, she was the most clever. You must be hungry. Have you eaten ginkgo nuts? What is ginkgo? The wolf asked. Ginkgo is soft and tender, like the skin of a baby. One taste and you will live forever, Shang said. And the nuts grow on the top of the tree just outside the door. The wolf gave a sigh. Oh dear, Popo is old. Her bones have become brittle. No longer can she climb trees. Good, Popo, we can pick some for you, Shang said. The wolf was delighted. Shang jumped out of bed and Tao and Poucha came with her to the ginkgo tree. There Shang told her sisters about the wolf, and all three climbed up the tall tree. The wolf waited and waited. Plump Tao did not come back. Sweet Poucha did not come back. Shang did not come back, and no one brought any nuts from the ginkgo tree. At last the wolf shouted, Where are you, children? Popo, Shang called out. We are on top of the tree eating ginkgo nuts. Good children, the wolf begged, pluck some for me. But Popo, ginkgo is magic only when it is plucked directly from the tree. You must come and pluck it from the tree yourself. The wolf came outside and paced back and forth under the tree, where he heard the three children eating the ginkgo nuts at the top. Oh, Popo, these nuts are so tasty, the skin so tender, Shang said. The wolf's mouth began to water for a taste. Finally, Shang, the eldest and most clever child, said, Popo, Popo, I have a plan. At the door there is a big basket. Behind it is a rope. Tie the rope to the basket and sit in the basket and throw the other end to me. I can pull you up. The wolf was overjoyed and fetched the basket and the rope, then threw one end of the rope to the top of the tree. Shang caught the rope and began to pull the basket up and up. Halfway, she let go of the rope, and the basket and the wolf fell to the ground. I am so small and weak, Popo, Shang pretended. I could not hold the rope alone. This time I will help, Tao said. Let us do it again. The wolf had only one thought in his mind, to taste a ginkgo nut. He climbed into the basket again. Now Shang and Tao pulled the rope on the basket together, higher and higher. Again they let go, and again the wolf tumbled down, down, and bumped his head. The wolf was furious. He growled and cursed. We could not hold the rope, Popo, Shang said, but only one ginkgo nut and you will be well again. I shall give a hand to my sisters this time, Poucha, the youngest, said. This time we shall not fail. Now the children pulled the rope with all of their strength. As they pulled, they sang, Hi-yo, hi-yo, and the basket rose straight up, higher than the first time, higher than the second time, higher and higher and higher until it nearly reached the top of the tree. When the wolf reached out, he could almost touch the highest branch. But at that moment, Shang coughed, and they all let go of the rope, and the basket fell down and down and down. Not only did the wolf bump his head, but he broke his heart to pieces. "Popo," Shang shouted, but there was no answer. "Popo," Tao shouted, but there was no answer. "Popo," Poucha shouted. There was still no answer. The children climbed to the branches just above the wolf and saw that he was truly dead. Then they climbed down, went into the house, closed the door, locked the door with the latch, and fell peacefully asleep. On the next day, their mother returned with baskets of food from their real Popo, and the three sisters told her the story of the Popo who had come.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and exit out of that. What a great story. If some of you remember, we may recognize this from the Little Red Riding Hood, right? It's a similar story. If you haven't read the Little Red Riding Hood, I really recommend you guys reading that. It's such a good book. So right now we're gonna take the next just minute to gather some materials. I'm gonna need you to get one piece of paper and some pencils, colored pencils, markers, crayons, whatever you have available at your house. I'm gonna give you guys just one quick minute to go gather those materials, okay? I'm gonna pause this. All right, we're back. I hope you have all of those materials gathered. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen with you because I'm gonna introduce our next step in our lesson, what we're gonna do. So like I said, really fast, we should have one piece of paper and you should have some crayons, colored pencils, markers. I have some pens and highlighters that I'm going to use. So now okay. This is supposed to be a puzzle, and if I was with you in person, we would be making this into a puzzle ourselves. However, I can't give you this paper, so we're not going to do that. Instead, we're just going to be separating this with lines, and I'm going to model that and show you how to do that, and you can watch along. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw a line. I'm going to grab one black marker. I'm going to draw one line. And I will show you where that is. Just all the way down like this. Okay? Not directly in the center. I'll stop sharing for a second so you can see a little bit more clearly. So it is a little bit off of the center, okay? Because we're going to make 1, 2, and 3 columns, okay? I'm going to share my screen with you one more time. So just imagine that it's going to look just like this, just instead of it being a puzzle, they're going to be straight lines, okay? Now I'm going to take my paper and my pen, and I'm going to draw one more line. Just like this. I will stop sharing that. So now with 2 lines, we have created 1, 2, and 3 columns. Okay, so we have 1 line here that you drew first. Just draw 1 more line directly off the center, and now you should have 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so I will go to my screen again to share with you. Again, just remember, we're not making this into a puzzle, unfortunately. So now, not quite in the middle, but a little bit above that middle of your paper, we are going to draw a line now going across, just like this, okay? So it's not right in the center of your paper, it is just above, okay? And my next one we're going to draw right here. So now I'm going to take my paper and I'm going to now draw one last line right here. So now I know this looks a little like it's a lot. So you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 boxes on your one piece of paper. Okay, so you drew a line here and here. Okay, so now we're going to get started and I'm going to share my screen with you one more time. We're going to now write, I'm going to put my ruler away that I was using. We're going to write, I'm going to grab a different marker if you would like to grab that. I'm going to write title in my first box right here in the corner. So I'm going to write title. Okay, so I have the word title right here. The next one I'm going to write good characters. And I'm actually going to do that with a different color, just so I have some variety. I'm going to do pink. Good. And if you don't know how to spell this, just look on the screen. So we should have title and good characters, right? It goes exactly along with what is on my paper. Title and good characters. And then I'm going to write evil characters, because we know that there was one, right? After reading that story, I'm going to grab another color. I'm going to write evil characters. And this is to help you. Title, good characters, evil characters, okay? So that is going to be it for my top row. We're going to now move on to my second row, my middle row. And I'm going to write now, I'll use my purple, and we're going to write in the beginning. And this is going to help us to remember what happened in the beginning of the story. In the beginning. Right? So now the first part is in the beginning. Now in my middle box, we're going to write in the middle. Okay. I'm going to grab another color. Well, you know what? Let's, for this one, I'm going to just do the same color since it's all, this is going to be more writing part. So in the middle. And my last one, we're going to say in the end. Right, so we're going to learn about what happened in the beginning of the story. We're going to learn about what happened in the middle of the story. Or, I'm sorry, we're going to retell, not learn, we already did. We're going to retell what happened in the beginning of the story. We're going to retell what happened in the middle. And we're going to retell what happened in the end of the story, okay? This whole thing is a key for you to become experts at retelling a story. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you one more time. We're going to write, I'm going to use red, and we're going to write setting in that top, the very first square of my last row. We're going to write setting. Just like so. This middle box, we're going to cross off because we're not going to use that one for this lesson. Okay, so I just made a squiggly X here because we're not going to use that. And for this last one, we're going to write lesson. Because we want to reflect and we want to be able to retell what the lesson of the story was. Okay, so I'm going to show this to you. So we have title, we have good characters, evil characters, we have in the beginning, we have in the middle, in the end. We're going to retell what the setting was, You should have this as a blank spot, and we're going to retell the lesson, okay? So I will hold that up for about 10 more seconds so you can see. Okay, great. So now we're going to put your finger on the title, right? Lay your paper down, title, okay? We're gonna go ahead and go over what is the title of the story. The title of the story, and I'm gonna grab my blue marker that I was using, is Lone Popo. Okay, so right here on the paper, or I'm sorry, on the PowerPoint, Lone Popo puzzle, we're gonna write Lone Popo. Okay, right here, Lone Popo. That is my title of the story. Now the next, who are my good characters? Think about that. Oops. Who were some of the good characters in that story? Was the wolf a good character? Does not sound like he was a good character. So we can say first that Shang was definitely a good character. Tao was a good character. And Patso, I'm sorry, I don't know how to say that. And then the mother, right? Because she returned at the end of the story. She was the real Popo, right? So we are going to write just these names that are exactly on this slideshow. We are going to write Shang, Tao, and Patso, and the mother, right? Those were all good characters. Now, let's go ahead and grab our other color. Who are the evil characters? So we said Shang, Tao, and Patso and the mother were good characters. Were there any other characters listed in that story? Maybe this picture will help you. But the wolf was not a nice character, right? He was evil. The wolf was evil because he knocks on the door and tells the children that he is their grandmother, right? He lied. He is not the grandmother. So the wolf, we now know he's a bad wolf, right? So the wolf right here, my bad character, is the wolf. Now, we're moving on to our second column, right? So in the beginning. Do you remember what happened in the beginning of the book, or of the folktale? Do you remember what happened in the beginning? The wolf saw the mother leave, so he disguised himself as an old woman and went to trick the children. That wolf was so bad, okay? So I want you guys to write exactly what is on this slideshow. I want you to write that right here in the beginning, right? We're gonna write the wolf saw the mother leave, so he pretended himself as an old woman and went to trick the children. So I know that's a lot for you guys to write. If you want to retell that in your own words, that is completely fine with me. If we were in a normal classroom, I would definitely have you do that. So I went ahead and wrote exactly, because this was my retelling of this story, right? So in the beginning, the wolf saw the mother leave. So he disguised himself as an old woman and went to trick the children. So now we're going to move on to in the middle. In the middle, we can just write maybe one or two of these bullet points, but the children believed the wolf and they let him inside. So I think that's something good to write. Let's just write that one. So we can say the children, I am writing that. So the children believed the wolf and let him inside. Okay, so I just wrote that first bullet point. So after you read the children believed the wolf and let him inside, just stop right there. Okay. But some other things that happened in the beginning was that the wolf climbed into bed with the children, planning to eat them. And Shang was clever, right? And he noticed the wolf's bushy tails, sharp claws, and hairy face. So that was very good of Shang. Now, at the end, what happened? So I said here, I retold this in my own words. I said, Shang convinced the wolf to fetch a basket and a rope so that she could pull himself up to the tree. She then let go of the rope and ended up killing the big bad wolf. So we can say, in the end, we can say Shang let go. Let's say Shang let go. Okay. So in the end, Shang let go. And we're going to say of the rope and killed the wolf. Okay. So in the end, Shang let go of the rope and killed the big bad wolf. So let's go ahead and I can take a minute to just hold this up here for you. So in the beginning, the wolf saw the mother leave. So he disguised himself as an old woman and went to trick the children. In the middle, the children believed the wolf and let him in. In the end, Shang let go of the rope and killed the wolf. So now we're going to move on to this area where it says setting, okay? Do you guys recall where this story was taken place? Was it taken place in America or was it taken place in China? The story was taken place in China, right? So we're going to write China. A setting is a place. China. We should have this one blank and then our lesson. What was the lesson of the story, right? What was that moral message of the story? So just by reading this, we can actually review what we have because that might help. So the title of my story is Lone Popo. My good characters are Shang, Tao, and Patso and my mom, or in the mother. The evil character is that big bad wolf. In the beginning, the wolf saw the mother leave, so he disguised himself as an old woman and went to trick the children. In the middle, the children believed the wolf and let him inside. In the end, Shang let go of the rope and killed the wolf. This was taking place in China, so my lesson, the only reason I said that is because I'm moving down. So my lesson now, based off of reading that, is to probably not ever trust a stranger, right? Because they can disguise themselves and make you believe that they're somebody that they aren't, right? And that is not good. We do not want to end up in a situation like Shang, Tao, and Patso, right? So for our lesson, we're going to say, never trust strangers. right? Never trust strangers. I wrote that right here for my lesson. We can even write here, stay close to friends and family. Okay, that is another idea that we can write down. So if you don't want to write never trust strangers, you can say stay close to friends and family. Okay. So this is how your graphic organizer, your map should look. And all of this information helps you retell the story, right? So now you were able to comprehend everything that we just learned in our story. You were able to not only write it on a paper, but you were also able to verbalize it. So now I really would love for you guys to go and tell somebody close to you all about this story, right? And if you have free time, go ahead and read the story, Little Red Riding Hood, and maybe you can think of some ideas that are similar in our story. I'm going to share my screen with you one more time, so wrap up really quickly. What are folktales? Folktales are traditional stories that were originally passed down through the word of mouth, right, from generation to generation. So this is a folktale. Why is it important to retell a story that we read? Because retelling a story is important because it ensures us of all of these events that took place in a story. And it helps us understand what happened in a story and why. So how do we retell a folktale? Well, we're going to think about the good characters, the evil characters, the main events in the beginning, middle, and end. We're going to think about that lesson that we learned, and we're going to think about it, and we're going to practice that in our life, right? So did we achieve our objective? Did you guys, in the beginning of the lesson, I told you you're going to learn how to retell a story. So now I hope you all can give this lesson 2 thumbs up, and I hope you feel super confident by creating this puzzle, we'll say, organizer. And now you know how to retell a folktale. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you loved my lesson, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye. Have a good night. All right, friends, we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to read you the story Lone Popo. I'm going to share my screen as I'm reading so you can see the pictures in our story here. Okay. So once, long ago, there was a woman who lived alone in the country with her 3 children, Shang, Tao, and Potsy. On the day of their grandmother's birthday, the good mother set off to see her, leaving the children at home. Before she left, she said, "Be good while I'm away, my heart-loving children. I will not return tonight. And remember to close the door tight at sunset and latch it well." But an old wolf lived nearby and saw the good mother leave at dusk. Disguised as an old woman, he came up to the house of the children and knocked on the door twice. Bang, bang! Shang, who was the eldest, said through the latch door, "Who is it?" "My little Jules," said the wolf. "This is your grandmother, your Popo." "Popo," Shang said, "our mother has gone to visit you." Uh-oh, this does not sound good. The wolf acted surprised. "To visit me? I have not met her along the way. She must have taken a different route." "Popo," Shang said, "how is it that you've come so late?" The wolf answered, "The journey is long, my children, and the day is short." Shang listened through the door. "Popo," she said, "why is your voice so low?" Your grandmother has caught a cold, good children, and it is dark and windy out here. Quickly open up and let your Popo come in, the cunning wolf said. Tao and Potsy could not wait. One unlatched the door and the other opened it. They shouted, Popo! Popo, come in! At the moment he entered the door, the wolf blew out the candle. Popo, Shank said, why did you blow out the candle? The room is now dark. The wolf did not answer. Tao and Potsy rushed to their Popo and wished to be hugged. The old wolf held Tao. Good child, you are so plump. He embraced Potsy. Good child, you've grown to be so sweet. Soon, the old wolf pretended to be sleepy. He yawned. All the chicks are in the coop, he said. Popo is sleepy too. And when he climbed into the big bed, Potsy climbed in at one, and the wolf and Shang and Tao climbed in at the other. But when Shang stretched, she touched the wolf's tail. Popo, Popo, your foot has a bush on it. Uh-oh. Popo has brought hemp strings to weave you a basket, the wolf said. Shang touched grandmother's sharp claws. Popo? Popo? Your hand has thorns on it. Popo has brought an awl to make shoes for you, the wolf said. And at once, Shang lit the light. The wolf blew it out again, but Shang had seen the wolf's hairy face. Oh no. Popo, Popo, she said, for she was not the eldest, she was the most clever. You must be hungry. Have you eaten ginkgo nuts? What is ginkgo? The wolf asked. Ginkgo is soft and tender like the skin of a baby. One taste and you will live forever, Shang said. And the nut grows on the top of the tree just outside the door. The wolf gave a sigh. Oh dear, Popo is so old. Her bones have become brittle and no longer can she climb the trees. Good, Popo. We can pick some for you, Shang said. The wolf is delighted. Shang jumped out of bed, and Tao and Pato came with her to the ginkgo tree. There, Shang told her sisters about the wolf, and all three climbed up the tall tree. The wolf waited and waited. Plump Tao did not come back. Sweet Poutsy did not come back. Shang did not come back, and no one brought any nuts from the ginkgo tree. At last the wolf shouted, Where are you, children? Popo Shang called out, We are on the top of the tree eating ginkgo nuts. Good, children, the wolf begged. Pluck some for me. But Popo and ginkgo is magic only when it is plucked directly from the tree. You must come and pluck it from the tree yourself. All right. The wolf came outside and paced back and forth under the tree where he heard the three children eating the ginkgo nuts at the top. Oh, Popo, these nuts are so tasty. The skin so tender, Shang said. The wolf's mouth began to water for taste. Finally, Shang, the eldest and most clever child, said, Popo, Popo, I have a plan. At the door, there is a big basket. Behind it is a rope. Tie the rope to the basket. Sit in the basket and throw the other end to me. I can pull you up. The wolf was overjoyed and fetched the basket and the rope, and then threw one end of the rope to the top of the tree. Shang caught the rope and began to pull the basket up and up. Halfway, she let go of the rope, and the basket and the wolf fell to the ground. I am so small and weak, Popo, Shang pretended. I cannot hold the rope alone. This time, I will help. Let us do it again. The wolf had only one thought in his mind, to taste a ginkgo nut. He climbed into the basket again. Now, Shang and Tao pulled the rope on the basket together, higher and higher. Again, they let go, and again the wolf tumbled down and bonked his head. The wolf was furious. He growled and cursed. "We cannot hold the rope, Popo," Shang said, "but only one ginkgo nut, and you will be well again. I shall give a hand to my sisters this time." Poutsy, the youngest, said, "This time we shall not fail." Now the children pulled the rope with all of their strength. As they pulled, they sang, "Hee-yo, and the basket rose straight up, higher than the first time, higher than the second time, and higher until it nearly reached the top of the tree. When the wolf reached out, he could almost touch the highest branch. But at that moment, Shane coughed, and they all let go of the rope, and the basket fell down and down. Not only did the wolf bump his head, but he broke his heart to pieces. "Popo," Shang shouted, but there was no answer. "Popo," Tao shouted, but there was no answer. "Popo," Poutsy shouted. There was still no answer. The children climbed to the branches just above the wolf and saw that he was truly dead. Then they climbed down, went into the house, closed the door, locked the door with the latch, and fell peacefully asleep. Oh, I don't know about you, but I don't think I could sleep after that. And that, my friends, is the end of our story. I'm going to stop sharing my screen with you. So quickly, let me X out of this. So, crazy story. Some of you might recognize that story from our American version of the story called Little Red Riding Hood. But it is so fun to get to discover all of the diverse stories around different cultures around the world. And it is so important for us to discover all of those stories around the world. So right now, we're going to move on to our activity together. And I want you guys to just take the time. We're going to say about 1 minute to take the time to go ahead and gather one piece of paper for our activity. It could be lined paper, it could be plain white paper, whatever you have available at home. And then I also want you to go ahead and grab some markers. So as you can see here, I have some colored pens and some highlighters. So if you have crayons available at home or markers, pens, whatever it is, go ahead and take the next minute and gather those two items, okay? So we need some writing tools and one piece of paper. And then we'll come back together after 1 minute.